Right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kanan Townsend, and I serve as the managing director here at the Moton Museum. And it's my pleasure to welcome you here on behalf of the Robert Russo Moton Museum and our staff. Especially, we'd like to thank any family, friends, members of the family of Oliver Hill Sr. who might have traveled, people who knew him, people who are watching who might have known Oliver Hill Sr. We very much appreciate you all being here to a person who means so very much to us here in Farmville, Virginia. Now, I've been here in this capacity at Moton for going on about 7 years. So I've had a decent amount of time to learn about the history and the events as they occurred here at Moton. And one thing is very clear, that there are quite a few important historical figures with regards to the story, and one of them is Mr. Oliver Hill Sr. Now, this site, formerly Robert Russo Moton High School, the first freestanding African-American high school built in Prince Edward County, was built in 1939 and was built to hold about 180 students. Now, the student body here at Moton High School at that time had about just under the amount that the building was built for at that moment in time. But as the years went on, the population quickly expanded, and the students very quickly realized that this space would not accommodate the number of students that they had here at Moton. And so eventually these students get fed up and they decide to do something about it. 1951, April 23rd, on this very stage to my left, Barbara Johns, 16-year-old junior here at Moton High School, led almost 500 students out of this very building that was built for less than 200 out on the protest, a strike. And that strike that they started, they had no idea would eventually change the course of United States history. Why? Because they were introduced through Reverend L. Francis Griffin to attorneys Oliver Hill and Spotswood Robinson, who eventually would agree to take a case on behalf of these students, not to build a new school, which is what these students initially wanted, but to sue for public school desegregation. Now, on April 23rd, 1951, that was not quite the household term that it would become in terms of desegregation and integration. But I think that these students knew that this had evolved into something that was a bit bigger than themselves. And a lot of that had to do with Oliver Hill Sr., who goes to law school explicitly for the purpose of dismantling the system of segregation. And so these students eventually agreed to participate in this case, represented by Oliver Hill and Spotswood Robinson and Martin A. Martin. They go to court with the Davis case, would eventually join Brown versus Board of Education, effectively ending public school segregation in the United States of America, changing the arc of history as we know it. So that represents some of the importance that Oliver Hill plays to us here in Farmville at Moton and this story that we talk about. And so Ms. Elaine Bankston, when she reached out to us with regards to the portrait of Oliver Hill, of course, we jumped at the opportunity. Back in 2019, we had the chance to erect a historical marker in honor of Oliver Hill Sr. In addition, there was one up in Roanoke and Richmond, Virginia as well. And I'll take a very brief moment to read off some of the language of that historical marker for context. So on behalf of local plaintiffs, civil rights attorney Oliver Whitehill Sr. and law partners Martin A. Martin and Spotswood Robinson III filed Davis v. Prince Edward in 1951 to challenge racial segregation in public schools. This case, along with several others consolidated into Brown v. Board, led to the U.S. Supreme Court's 1954 decision declaring public school segregation unconstitutional. Defying the desegregation order in 1959, Prince Edward County closed its public schools. Hill and NAACP leaders, Roy Wilkins, L. Francis Griffin, led a rally at the county courthouse in 1961, denouncing the closing of the schools that would eventually reopen in 1964 with the Griffin v. Prince Edward County case here in Prince Edward. Okay, so between 10 years, we had 2 U.S. Supreme Court cases happen in little town Farmville, Virginia, of all places in the world. We had 2 in 10 years, and a lot of that started with Mr. Oliver Hill Sr. Now, Elaine. Miss Elaine Bankston, she sketched multiple people's faces for as long as she can remember. Back in 1979, she began doing portraits professionally. It was after she became a flight attendant and visited famous museums around the world that she knew her interest in art would become a lifelong pursuit. Her travels and exposure to different people and cultures provided her with strong visual memories that continue to feed her work today. Elaine works in charcoal, pastel, and oil. In the interest of time and quality, she can only take a limited number of commissions each year. She can work from photographs alone or a combination of sittings and photographs. Time of completion varies according to the number of commissions waiting, but usually pastels can be completed within 4 weeks and oils within 3 to 6 months, depending on the complexity. And I would encourage you to reach out to her for more information. So now I would like to invite Ms. Elaine Bankston up to give a few remarks on behalf of herself and the portrait of Oliver Hill Sr.
Thank you so much. thank all of you for coming. And I want to first of all thank God Almighty for giving me this art. And I want to thank Oliver Hill for all the work that he's done over the years. And it has greatly affected my two little biracial granddaughters, which I love dearly. And so I want to also thank Duke for all the wonderful letters of recommendation he wrote on my behalf. And I want to thank Maurice Hopkins for the letter of recommendation he wrote for me too, and the foundation for all their backing. I appreciate that. And just thank all of you for being here, and I'm ready to unveil as soon as Renee would like to say a few words, I'm sure, and Maurice. And thank you so much for being here.
Hello, my name is Renee Hill. I'm Oliver Hill Sr.'s daughter-in-law. My husband and I lived with him the last 12 years of his life, and he was just a marvelous person. But in terms of the Barbara Johns story, you probably know that Charles Hamilton Houston was the law professor at Howard who was the architect of the strategy to break down the Jim Crow laws and to end segregation. And so they changed it from a night school to a day school and brought in the students specifically to go against the Jim Crow laws and the segregation that was rampant, of course, in this country. And in that class was that first class was my father-in-law and Thurgood Marshall and a host of fabulous lawyers who went out there to fight for us. And so Charles Hamilton Houston was not only their teacher, but he was also the architect of the strategy that they were going to use. And the strategy was initially, if we're going to say separate but equal, then by God, it's going to be equal. And we're going to bankrupt all these school districts because we're going to say that these Black schools have to be equal. And so the lawyers went out and did that. And then finally, they decided that it was time to actually go against the law and say that this is the end. It's time for us to desegregate. And of course, that's when Brown came around. And so they had the cases that they were going to do when they got the call from Barbara Johns. And they met her, and they initially were like, we're not going to take this case because we have the cases that we need. But my father-in-law said that Barbara Johns was so impressive and so inspiring that they decided that they were going to add this case, even though they already had the cases lined up that they were going to take to the Supreme Court. And so she even impressed these hardened, seasoned lawyers. This young woman of 16, she was clearly amazing. And it's just wonderful that this monument to those students is here because it was so hard and they were so brave. And I'm so happy that Elaine Banks did this portrait, and it will hang here because we don't recognize the courage of people who are going against their whole community and whose parents can get fired and can have so many repercussions of your bravery. So thank you, Elaine. Thank you to you all here in the museum. And you're going to say a few words, Mr. Hopkins? I hadn't planned to, but I will. I mean, Mr. Hopkins is the head of the Oliver Hill Foundation, and they're taking care of my father-in-law's, extending my father-in-law's legacy. So thank you to all of you for coming today. Thank you, Ms. Banks. This is a wonderful occasion, and I'm so happy that we're here today.
Good evening, everyone. It's nice to be back in Farmville. We were here a couple of years ago with the roadside sign that was put out in front of the building. And it was quite a revelation to have that done. And there, as you said, 3 of them, and one is right here in Farmville. I had the honor, privilege, and pleasure of growing up with Renee's husband, nicknamed Duke. I was a few years older than he was, and my parents and his parents were friends. We grew up in Ebenezer Baptist Church in Richmond, Virginia. And at that time, as a young boy, I had no idea the relative importance of Mr. Hill. He was just Mr. Hill to me. But as time went on and we recognized his tenure, his lifelong accomplishments, it's just truly amazing. We're delighted to be here, and I'm delighted to represent the board, the foundation board, as we both, the board and myself personally, have worked with Elaine Bankston for a number of years. Elaine is a fighter. Without a doubt, I've offered her a board seat, but she's too busy. She's out there promoting the name of Oliver Hill. We have tried together in several different arenas to get his portraits placed. And I'm delighted that you here at the Moton Museum have accepted that offer. I can't say any more than what you're going to witness with this portrait. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Bankston and whomever is going to do the unveiling. Thank you.
I just want to mention one thing. You know, one of the ways that we continue to elevate the legacy of what happened here in Prince Edward and all those that played an important part is through some of the partnership efforts that we've been able to seek. I am proud of two things that we're working towards here at the museum that will help to amplify the legacy of Barbara Johns, of Oliver Hill, of Spotswood Robinson, and others. The first is that we have become an affiliate of the Brown v. Board of Education's National Historic Park. Grateful to Senator Warner and Senator Kane for their support of that effort in May of this year. The opportunity to bring together all of the sites involved in the historic Brown decision is a really special thing that we cherish greatly. We'll have the opportunity to welcome some of the plaintiffs in the Brown decision from other communities to Farmville next year, and we'll certainly keep you updated to have you join us in that important effort. But so that's one effort. The second effort is we are seeking to become a World Heritage Site and have joined with 12 other civil rights sites across the South to put forward for that. We believe that not only is this story important to the community, to the Commonwealth, to the nation, but there is a international significance in terms of what happened and in terms of who was involved. And so when you think about the Great Pyramids of Egypt, when you think about the Taj Mahal, think about Moton and some of the civil rights sites that were important to the betterment of this country. So I just wanted to share that. We're so thankful for all who are intertwined with the legacy of what makes this story very special and important. So we'll transition to the portrait unveiling. Ms. Bankston, and As president of the Oliver Hill Foundation, we'd love for you to come forward. Mr. Renee, we'd love for you to come forward. Oh, and join us. Thank you.